There is something off with Erica Kirk. What she is wearing seems a bit inappropriate to mourn your husband, who was literally taken out for the entire world to see.
Joe Rogan didn't just question the official story. He cracked open a secret that could rewrite everything we thought we knew about Charlie Kirk's death. Joe Rogan has never been afraid to speak his mind. But this time, his words did more than stir debate. They detonated a cultural earthquake on a quiet afternoon episode of The Joe Rogan Experience. The host leaned forward, brows knit, and said something that instantly shifted the conversation online. Something about this whole story doesn't add up. Within hours, those 11 words echoed across every corner of the internet. Threads multiplied. Clips went viral. And what began as a casual moment of skepticism turned into the spark for one of the most explosive mysteries in American media. At the center of it all stood one name: Erica Kirk, the widow of conservative leader Charlie Kirk, who was killed in front of thousands during what was supposed to be a routine university event. But Rogan's disbelief didn't just question the shooter, the weapon, or the timeline. It hinted at something far more unsettling. Something behind the curtain. Charlie's death had already fractured the political world, but Rogan's remarks gave people permission to ask the questions no one wanted to touch. Was this really the random act of a lone gunman, or was there something larger at play? It wasn't long before the conversation shifted away from the tragedy itself and toward the woman now standing in Charlie's shadow. Clips began resurfacing of Erika, calm, composed, and somehow untouched by grief. Her posture, her tone, her timing, it all felt off. And when Rogan repeated his doubts the next day, his audience didn't hear uncertainty. They heard a challenge. "It's weird," he said plainly. "The whole thing feels weird." Those few words did what an entire media cycle couldn't. They redirected the spotlight. Suddenly, everyone wanted to know who Erica Kirk really was and why every move she made seemed to fit too neatly into a story that made no sense. The line between speculation and revelation blurred instantly. What started as an internet whisper became a full-blown storm, one that would drag in everyone from Donald Trump to Candace Owens, unraveling the glossy image of Turning Point America and replacing it with something darker, colder, and much more calculated.
The fact that Charlie Kirk's assassination is still being covered up, she is still walking around with the same security from September 10th, saying she's so excited for the new...
But to understand how one offhand remark became a national obsession, we have to start where this story truly begins, with the moment Joe Rogan decided to say out loud what millions were already thinking. The night Charlie Kirk was killed wasn't supposed to be anything extraordinary. IT was another stop on his American comeback tour, a packed auditorium at a Utah university, full of students waving flags, cheering, chanting his name. Then, chaos, a deafening sound. Screams. Panic. And in an instant, the face of one of America's most polarizing voices was gone. Authorities wasted no time naming their suspect, a 25-year-old man allegedly using an antique World War I rifle. According to the official account, he smuggled the weapon inside, disassembled, and somehow reassembled it unnoticed, right in the middle of the crowd. Then he fired. Multiple times. Vanished. And was caught hours later under what officials described as unusual circumstances. Even before the details were public, Rogan smelled something off on his podcast. He replayed the report twice, shaking his head in disbelief. Wait, so he just took apart a century-old gun, got it through security, put it back together, fired it, and walked out? Come on. He didn't mince words. His voice dripped with sarcasm as he picked apart every hole in the story. The supposed weapon had no serial number. The suspect's confession appeared out of nowhere. The timeline didn't match up. It was like every loose thread in the narrative had been tied too quickly, too neatly, like a movie that rushed its ending. "I wish I was a cop in that room," Rogan said. "I'd be sitting there thinking, none of this makes sense." That single line became the internet's rallying cry. None of this makes sense. Clips from the episode flooded social media. Fans replayed his tone, his pacing, his smirk, convinced Rogan wasn't just talking about inconsistencies. He was hinting at something bigger. Theories multiplied. Some pointed fingers at the feds, others at Turning Point America itself. And somewhere in the middle of it all, people began asking about Erika, the wife who, by all appearances, was already moving forward before the dust had even settled. The FBI released its report within days. Case closed. Motive: ideological disagreement. But Rogan wasn't buying it. He argued that real investigations don't move that fast, that the speed of the closure was a red flag by itself. When an investigation's real, he said, details don't just fall into place overnight. They take time. When it's theater, you get a script, not a report. And that line hit hard, because by now, it didn't feel like a tragedy. It felt like a performance. Each update from law enforcement only deepened the confusion. Every photo released looked staged. Every timeline adjusted slightly, as if reality itself was being edited. Meanwhile, Erica Kirk appeared serene, controlled, almost rehearsed, and public tears. No visible anger, just calm statements and subtle smiles. It was enough to make people wonder, was this composure or concealment? By the time the first week had passed, the internet had turned into an open investigation. Comment sections read like case files. YouTube channels dissected body language, timelines, and headlines, one frame at a time. And Joe Rogan's name, once again, was at the center of the storm. He hadn't accused anyone. He didn't need to. All he said was that something about this story didn't sit right, and somehow, that single spark had ignited the kind of wildfire that no one could control. In the days following Charlie Kirk's death, one image began circulating everywhere. Erica Kirk, standing tall in a black dress, eyes forward, hands clasped, smiling faintly at a memorial where her husband's parents hadn't even been invited to speak. To most, it looked strange, eerily calm, almost like a woman attending a press event, not mourning a partner lost in front of the entire world. Her outfit, her tone, the way she carried herself, nothing screamed grief. It whispered strategy. Within a week, that whisper turned into outrage when the Turning Point America board announced that Erika would step in as CEO. The timing? Barely 10 days after Charlie's funeral. The justification? Continuing his legacy.
That after they greet each other with this professional kind of kiss, she completely melts into him. It's not just with the arms that go around him, her head also just melts.
But to Rogan's listeners, it felt less like tribute and more like transition. She wasn't just taking over the organization. She was taking control of the narrative. In public, Erika framed her new role as an act of devotion, her way of keeping Charlie's dream alive. But behind closed doors, insiders started leaking whispers that she'd been quietly assuming executive duties long before the tragedy. Sponsorship approvals, tour schedules, even personnel changes, all allegedly bearing her signature weeks before her husband's final appearance. And the internet noticed. Fans pulled up timestamps, old live streams, and company filings, connecting dots that no one in the mainstream press dared to acknowledge. It was as if Erika's rise had been mapped out long before anyone realized Charlie's time was running short. Joe Rogan didn't call her out by name, but his tone told its own story. He talked about how power doesn't just move, it's handed off. He said the timing was too neat, too convenient, and his listeners knew exactly who he was referring to. Then came the footage that sealed public suspicion. Erika walking onto a stage, her husband's stage, smiling under bright lights, introducing a new season of his podcast. Continuing the mission, she said. The same mission Charlie had warned in earlier interviews was becoming too political, too donor-driven. The optics were impossible to ignore. A widow turned leader, a tragedy turned opportunity, and behind every appearance, every headline, there was the unmistakable echo of PR choreography. Clips of Erika's speeches began trending on TikTok and X. Viewers commented on her phrasing, her body language, her uncanny ability to hit the perfect tone between sadness and resolve. One viral comment summed it up. She's not grieving. She's auditioning. Then came her first televised interview, soft lighting, neutral tones, carefully worded answers. I just want to continue what Charlie started, she said. But to many watching, it sounded less like heartbreak and more like branding. Joe Rogan's disbelief had planted the seed, but Erika's own actions were watering it. Every move she made, every headline she appeared in, seemed to reinforce the idea that this wasn't just recovery, it was repositioning. And while she smiled for the cameras, An entirely new storyline began forming online. Had Erica Kirk truly stepped up to honor her husband's work, or was she stepping into a role that had been waiting for her all along? The memorial for Charlie Kirk was meant to be sacred, a farewell to a man whose voice had shaped a movement. Instead, it became something entirely different, a media spectacle. The stadium lights were dimmed, the stage glowing in soft gold. Thousands filled the seats. Politicians, donors, friends, and cameras everywhere. It was supposed to be about Charlie. But the moment Donald Trump walked out, the energy shifted. Trump's speech was what everyone expected, reverent, emotional, heavy with patriotism. But what happened after he finished turned the solemn tribute into something far stranger. He turned toward Erica Kirk, who stood near the podium, her eyes glassy, her hands trembling just enough for the cameras to notice. Trump reached out, pulled her close, wrapped his arm around her, and whispered something no microphone caught. For a few seconds, it looked compassionate, the comforting of a grieving widow. But to millions watching the replay online, it didn't look like comfort. It looked like connection. Too close. Too long. Too knowing. Erica lifted her hand toward the ceiling, forming the I love you sign, the same gesture Charlie used to make during rallies. The crowd gasped. Trump nodded, still holding her. He whispered again. And that was all it took for the internet to erupt. Clips of the moment spread across every platform, side-by-side comparisons of their body language. Slow-motion breakdowns from body language experts. Commentators replayed the clip frame by frame, and the narrative took shape faster than anyone could contain it. People began digging through archives. And that's when the revelation dropped. Erica wasn't just some anonymous woman who'd suddenly stepped into the political spotlight. Years before she ever became Mrs. Kirk, she'd been Erica France, a contestant in the Miss USA pageant, back when Donald Trump owned the organization. Old footage resurfaced. A young Erica waving at the judges, introducing herself as Erika from Arizona, smiling under the bright lights. It was glitzy, harmless, until it wasn't, because in hindsight, it showed a connection that had gone unnoticed for over a decade. At the time, Trump was famous for his personal involvement with the pageant, approving contestant lineups, attending rehearsals, even giving last-minute notes backstage. So when people learned that Erica had competed under his ownership, they didn't just see coincidence. They saw history. What had once been viewed as a tender exchange at a memorial now looked like the reunion of two people whose paths had crossed long before politics ever entered the picture. The whispers grew louder. Did Trump already know Erica Kirk before Charlie ever met her? Was their bond purely professional, or something more complicated? No one could prove anything. But the timing, the gestures, and the chemistry caught on camera told a story that needed no confirmation. By sunrise the next day, hashtags like #EricaandTrump and #MemorialMystery were trending. Every clip, every still photo, every angle was dissected like evidence in a trial. And in the chaos, one thing became clear. What was supposed to be a goodbye had turned into a beginning. Erica Kirk was no longer just the grieving widow. She was now the center of a national conversation, one that tied together power, politics, and a past that suddenly didn't seem so distant. And as Joe Rogan's earlier words resurfaced, something about this whole thing doesn't make sense. Millions began to wonder if he had been right all along. The connection between Erica Kirk and Donald Trump wasn't new. It was just forgotten. Long before her marriage, long before she stood at political rallies or on the stage of Turning Point America, Erica was chasing a different kind of spotlight. The glamorous, tightly controlled world of beauty pageants. In 2012, she competed as Miss Arizona USA, walking under the bright lights of the Miss USA stage, a competition then owned by none other than Donald J. Trump. He wasn't just a distant figurehead, he was known for his hands-on involvement. Contestants often spoke about his surprise visits, his presence at rehearsals, and his reputation for personally approving looks, costumes, even contestants' on-camera introductions. So when clips resurfaced of a young Erica smiling into the camera, "Hi, I'm Erika from Arizona," the internet saw more than a coincidence. They saw the start of a story that had been waiting in the wings for over a decade. After the pageant, Erika didn't disappear like most contestants did. She stayed in the orbit of the Trump brand, attending charity events, posing at fundraisers, mingling with familiar faces in the political entertainment circuit. Nothing scandalous, nothing overt, but enough to keep her name in the right circles. And when she eventually married Charlie Kirk, it seemed like two very different worlds were merging, his built on conservative ideology and political strategy, hers on presentation and media control. Together, they became a power couple for the modern right. Ambitious, youthful, telegenic. But now, that same image looked orchestrated. The more people dug, the stranger it got. There were photos of Erika attending Trump events years before Turning Point ever gained national traction. There were mutual donors, individuals who had funded both the pageant world and later, the conservative movement that made Charlie famous. And when you put those threads together, it didn't look random at all. It looked like a network, one that had been building connections for years. Joe Rogan's audience, ever the investigators, seized on these links. Reddit threads lit up with timelines, screenshots, old video stills. Commenters began mapping out Erika's journey from Miss Arizona to political figurehead, and the dots connected a little too neatly. It's almost like she was being positioned, one commenter wrote, not just to marry into power, but to become power. Even Rogan's co-host couldn't ignore the parallels. You don't go from pageants to political boards overnight, he said, unless someone opens the door for you. And just like that, the narrative took its next turn. People began asking the question that shifted the entire conversation. Was Erica Kirk chosen? Chosen to represent an image, chosen to control a brand, chosen to step into a vacuum the moment Charlie was gone. Suddenly, the theory wasn't about who killed Charlie Kirk, it was about who benefited when he was no longer there. The memorial moment with Trump wasn't just emotional, it was symbolic. A passing of something intangible, a gesture that now carried the weight of a decade-long connection. And once that context surfaced, every public appearance Erika made afterward looked deliberate, each one reinforcing her new role as not just the grieving widow, but the next face of a movement Charlie might not have fully recognized by the time it consumed him. The stage lights from the Miss USA pageant had long gone dark, but somehow, for Erica Kirk, they had never really turned off. When the Turning Point America board quietly announced Erica Kirk as its new CEO, the official statement framed it as a tribute, a wife continuing her late husband's dream. But to those who'd been following the story, it looked less like a tribute and more like a takeover. Behind the scenes, reports started leaking almost immediately. Anonymous insiders claimed that some board members hadn't even been consulted before the decision was finalized. Others hinted that powerful donors had been pressuring the organization to maintain stability. One alleged email, later posted online, read, "We can't afford a leadership gap. Erika keeps the donors calm." Another, "Transition optics are critical. The public must see continuity, not chaos." It sounded less like mourning and more like marketing. Joe Rogan's fans were quick to catch on. They replayed his earlier comments about theater over truth and started pairing them with these internal leaks. The pattern was impossible to ignore. The faster Erika climbed, the faster the story around Charlie's death seemed to disappear. And then came the bombshell, a leaked memo allegedly titled, "Transition Strategy." Its contents were brief, but chilling. Erika understands the new direction. We'll frame this as honoring his legacy. That word, frame, lit social media on fire because it didn't sound like grief. It sounded like rebranding. Within days, Turning Point's official website quietly updated. No grand announcement, no press conference, just a new homepage banner, Erika smiling before an American flag under the headline "Continuing Charlie's Vision." To the untrained eye, it looked patriotic. But to those who had been tracking the story, it felt eerie. Meanwhile, longtime staffers started vanishing. Board members resigned without explanation. The organization's public filings showed subtle but suspicious changes, revisions to timelines, donor acknowledgments, even the removal of several archived press releases. When one conservative outlet asked for comment, a spokesperson dismissed everything as baseless speculation. But speculation was already the bloodstream of the internet, and Rogan's remarks had made sure of it. He didn't need to accuse anyone by name. His listeners did the math for him. Why did the board act so fast? Why did Erica's promotion seem pre-written? And why did every inconvenient document or timestamp suddenly disappear? As the digital detectives pieced together leaks and rumors, another name began to reappear. Larry Ellison, the billionaire tech investor allegedly tied to Turning Point's rumored TikTok partnership. In Rogan's own words, every time there's big money and a dead man in the same headline, someone's rewriting history. The quote went viral within minutes, because this wasn't just about grief anymore, it was about control. For Erica Kirk, every public appearance became a balancing act. Too emotional, and critics would say she was playing the victim. Too composed, and they'd call her heartless. But through it all, one thing was certain. Her ascent wasn't slowing down. New sponsors rolled in. New partnerships launched. New speeches filled arenas. And yet, the louder her public success became, the quieter the truth behind Charlie's final days seemed to grow. It was as if his death had become a foundation, something solid to build an empire on. And now, for the first time, people were beginning to ask, was this empire built on legacy or leverage? If the Turning Point board thought the chaos would die down once Erica Kirk was firmly in charge, they were wrong. Because the real storm wasn't happening in boardrooms, it was unfolding online. Across YouTube, TikTok, and X, thousands of creators began dissecting every pixel of every clip. Conspiracy channels spliced together Rogan's podcast segments with footage from the memorial, crossfading between Trump's whispered condolence and Erica's unwavering stare. Others went a step further, comparing her speech cadence to political campaign launches, arguing that her delivery was too polished to be spontaneous. Even mainstream commentators, usually cautious to avoid controversy, couldn't ignore the spectacle. It wasn't just that Erika had stepped into power so quickly, it was how she did it. Every appearance was meticulously framed. Every word sounded tested in a world built on authenticity. She came off as cinematic, controlled, deliberate, and difficult to read. That's when Candace Owens entered the conversation, and everything exploded. Candace, once one of Charlie Kirk's closest allies, went live one evening and did what few dared to. She directly questioned the narrative. Her tone was sharp, trembling with anger. "You don't replace a man before his story's even told," she said. "And you definitely don't call it honoring him when his parents are still waiting for answers." The clip went viral within hours. Candace accused the Turning Point board of rushing Erica's appointment, claiming outside pressure from major donors and political strategists. Her words struck a chord, not just with fans, but with Rogan's audience too. He replayed her rant on his show, nodding quietly as she spoke. Then, he added a single line that made his listeners freeze. She's saying what everyone's afraid to admit, that grief has become a business model. From that moment, the internet split into factions. One side defended Erika fiercely, calling her strength inspiring, the picture of a woman carrying forward her husband's mission in the face of tragedy. The other side saw something much darker: manipulation, opportunism, and a network of powerful figures tightening their grip under the guise of legacy. Even those who'd stayed silent began choosing sides. Former Turning Point employees posted cryptic messages about contracts signed too soon. Anonymous insiders shared screenshots of strategic rollout meetings scheduled within days of the funeral. Each leak poured gasoline on the fire. Rogan kept fanning the flames, not by shouting, but by asking the questions no one else would. How does a case this big get closed so fast? How do donors make leadership decisions before a family gets closure? And how do all these coincidences line up perfectly for one person's benefit? His words echoed across social feeds, stirring doubt even among those who hadn't followed the story before. The hashtags returned, louder this time. Hashtag Justice for Charlie. Hashtag The Erika Files. Hashtag What Rogan Knows. News outlets tried to shift focus, publishing puff pieces about Erika's grace under fire. But the damage was already done. The public wasn't buying the narrative anymore. They were rewriting it. By now, it wasn't just a story about Charlie Kirk's death. It was about influence, image, and the uncomfortable truth of what happens when power changes hands too cleanly, too quickly. As Rogan said during one of his most replayed segments, "The weirdest part about this story isn't what we know, it's what we're not allowed to know." And with that, the firestorm was no longer about speculation. It had become a full-blown reckoning. By the time the dust began to settle, one thing was clear. This wasn't just a headline anymore. It was a movement. Charlie Kirk's death had ignited a wave of speculation, but what followed was something much more complicated: a cultural autopsy. Every thread of the story had been stretched, dissected, and reassembled until it no longer resembled the neat, packaged version handed to the public. And at the center of that reconstruction stood Erica Kirk, smiling for cameras, reshaping her husband's legacy, and walking through a storm she no longer seemed to notice. In the weeks that followed, Turning Point America underwent what insiders called a restructuring. In reality, it looked more like a purge. Names disappeared from the official site. Old board members went silent. Financial documents were updated with new signatures, new contracts, new donors. And every update brought the same question back into focus: how much of this had already been planned before Charlie's final day? Then came the leaks. Screenshots of internal chats surfaced, messages suggesting that the organization's top backers were using Charlie's death as an opportunity to realign the brand. One alleged comment even read, "Sympathy is our strongest currency right now." The line was almost too cynical to be real, but it matched the tone of everything that had followed: carefully choreographed mourning, media control, and an agenda that never slowed down. Joe Rogan, for his part, refused to let it fade. He returned to the topic weeks later, his voice quieter but heavier. When real justice happens, the Fed stays silent until there's proof. But this case? It's chaos. It's noise. He paused, then added, "They're not solving anything. They're burying it." That one sentence reignited the conversation all over again. Clips of it flooded TikTok, spreading faster than any official statement the FBI ever made. Because in a story this tangled, silence wasn't comforting. It was suspicious. Then came the final straw, an event honoring Charlie's legacy. Erika took the stage in a sharp red suit, smiling before a massive American flag backdrop. She spoke of continuing the mission, of carrying the torch, of building what Charlie started. The audience cheered. Cameras flashed, but to millions watching online, the performance felt hollow, like watching a trailer for a movie no one wanted to see. That night, Rogan's podcast dropped another bombshell. He said an anonymous guest, someone close to the case, claimed that investigators had withheld digital evidence, including communications between key donors and Turning Point executives in the days following Charlie's death. Rogan didn't name sources. He didn't need to. He ended the segment with a single question that has haunted the internet ever since. If the truth doesn't make sense, maybe it's because we're not being told the real story. That question still echoes. Was Erica Kirk simply a woman thrust into the spotlight, doing her best to preserve her husband's dream? Or was she part of something larger? A web of influence, wealth, and loyalty that extends far beyond grief? The truth might never be clear. The FBI remains silent. Turning Point continues its expansion. And Erika, unbothered, unshaken, keeps appearing on stages across America,